In A Journey to the West, in the previous lesson, we talked about getting used to drinking coffee. Now, at that time, we talked about the stage-by-stage practice of Milarepa. I can basically just read this to everyone, because at that time, His Holiness went to the second stop, which is to say this was related to Kagyu centers. Earlier, we talked about recognizing mind-nature in Dzogchen, which was actually also at that center where both Kagyu and Nyingma were practiced. And then this one was also Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche's center at that time. And there were many in that area that had connections with Kagyu teachings. So His Holiness at that time taught based on the Kagyu tradition. Actually, His Holiness taught extremely well. It seemed like when teaching Kagyu, His Holiness was like someone who had always studied Kagyu. When teaching Sakya, it was as if he had specialized in Sakya. When teaching Jonang or Gelug, it was the same. So here he mainly taught the stage-by-stage practice of Milarepa. On June 27th, His Holiness, in the city of Denver, at the well-known Mile High Church, gave teachings there for the Vajradhatu community, as well as many non-Buddhists, a teaching revolving around the Kagyu lineage. First, His Holiness paid homage to Buddha Dharmakirtis Agara, the Tathagata, Arhat, Omniscient One, perfect in illumination and conduct, knower of the world, supreme tamer of men, teacher of devas and humans, Bhagavat, Buddha, Buddha Dharmakirtis Agara. To you I pay homage, to you I make offerings, in you I take refuge. Then His Holiness said at that time, relying on the four great aspirations made by Buddha Dharmakirtis Agara in the past, may his boundless wisdom, compassion and power grant blessings, so I and all sentient beings may enjoy his fruition. This is from our Medicine Buddha Sutra, which contains this aspiration prayer. When I taught the Sutra of the Seven Medicine Buddhas, I also explained why the name of Buddha Dharmakirtis Agara, generally speaking in relatively remote border regions, where the name of the Buddha Dharma is very difficult to hear, if we recite the name of Buddha Dharmakirtis Agara, it will immediately generate virtue in them and immediately lead them to have faith in the Buddha. So it can be recited in relatively remote border areas. At that time, His Holiness, because here there were many non-Buddhists, was probably mainly targeting them. So at that time he recited this name and verses. His Holiness said, "All right now, having supplicated and praised my deity to whom I have strong devotion, in order for the noble Dharma to enter into your mind streams." Why did His Holiness recite this? His Holiness was often like this. When going to some border regions, especially places where the Buddha Dharma was not flourishing, he would often recite this Buddha's name, then chanted the full name of Buddha Dharmakirtis Agara 7 times. Today my teaching is about the essential points of Dharma practice. The reason for sharing this topic is that I am hoping to help the novice Buddhists know more about Buddhism and how it developed. This time they can gain some understanding of Buddhism. Some people are of this type. And to also remind the senior Buddhists how to enhance and improve their actual practice. This is the second type, and most are of this type. Also, for those following other religious traditions or having no religious beliefs, they can gain a clear idea of what Buddhism is essentially about and then give careful consideration on whether it is worthwhile for them to enter Buddhism. There are probably these 3 or 4 types of people. Perhaps teaching like this is a bit difficult, as you all know, if we were all Buddhists, all Tibetan Buddhists, all Chinese Han Buddhists. Teaching the Dharma specifically for them would be fine, but with all kinds of people, some have faith, some have no faith, some believe in other religions. This group is quite complex. In this situation, mainly focused on the Kagyu tradition, so at that time His Holiness taught this way. If an individual deliberately decides to follow Buddhism, then this person will be able to advance along the Dharma path gradually and stably. Introduction of the Kagyu lineage masters. I will first talk about the transmission of the Buddha Dharma. Our root teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, possessor of all omniscient, skillful means, caring for us with great compassion and loving kindness, aroused the supreme bodhicitta long ago. He accumulated immense amounts of merit for 3 countless eons and finally demonstrated the realization of fully enlightened Buddhahood in Bodh Gaya, India. Then, before the supreme sentient beings endowed with the uncommon powers, for example, he first turned the 3 Dharma wheels of the Sutrayana, then in many places, such as the pure realm of Akanistha, appearing as Vajradhara, he extensively taught the secret mantra teachings. In the future, when we give teachings to others, if we are just teaching Sutrayana, teaching only Sutrayana is fine, but regarding Vajrayana, we should also explain it like this, that Buddha Shakyamuni propagated it in this way. Where are these teachings flourishing today? In our human world, the Buddha Dharma originated from Bodh Gaya, like the rising sun, at that time just like the initially rising sun, and then gradually illuminated the entire land of India. Later, as prophesied by the Buddha himself, as we mentioned earlier, just as it was foretold in sutras like the Vimalakirti Sutra, the Buddha Dharma was propagated in the snowland of Tibet and has been thriving up to the present time. In Tibetan areas, there are generally the 8 great lineages of attainment and 10 great lineages of study. Actually, regarding the lineages of attainment, they include Nyingma, Kagyu, and so on. And on top of these, some branches were added, such as at that time Vairotsana and Dromton and others. Some schools they founded. And then regarding the later teaching lineages, there are some different explanations for the teaching lineages. Some say, for example, Thonmi, Vairotsana, and also Chaglotsawa, Chojepal, the various different schools they later founded. In any case, many of these Dharma transmissions still remain very active in today's world. Among the 8 great lineages of attainment, the first one that thrived in Tibet is the earlier translation school of Nyingma, represented by Orgyen Dorje Chang or Padma Sambhava, Vimalamitra, and other great masters. This is the Nyingma tradition. A few centuries later, an extraordinary person in the place called Lodrak, named Marpa Lotsawa, Marpa, he was the well-known great translator. Marpa Lotsawa believed that there needed to be a new Dharma that was more complete than the previous lineages. Of course, this is their explanation. Actually, the teachings of the Nyingma tradition, as Venerable Atisha mentioned before, are also very complete. But at that time, his view was probably more suitable for people of the new schools, so that disciples of the new schools would benefit greatly. In order to seek the Dharma, he experienced all kinds of hardship and journeyed to India 3 times. Of course, different histories have different accounts. Including in the great biography of Marpa Lotsawa, it mentions 3 times. In the very early days, I saw a Tibetan version, but there are also some different histories that mention more than 20 times. It seems recollection of the time gone by also mentions this a bit. On his 3rd journey, he encountered the peerless and most venerable Atisha, who was on his way to Tibet. While in India, Marpa Lotsawa undertook an exhaustive search and sought out the great accomplished master Naropa many times. Who was Naropa? He was directly guided by Vajradhara, a chief disciple of the Mahasiddha Tilopa. He was also Tilopa's disciple, and the well-known Pandita guarding the north gate of Nalanda University. At that time, he received extensive instructions. He also relied on many other great accomplished teachers, including Maitripa, the guru of Venerable Atisha Maitripa, and many other accomplished masters. Gradually, he made the new schools, that is, his Kagyu tradition. The Kagyu tradition and Kadam tradition, later gradually different schools flourished. He brought all these teachings back to Tibet, and as a result, the extensive doctrines of secret mantra began to thrive in the land of Tibet. At that time, Marpa Lotsawa, before he was about to leave Venerable Naropa in India, the Guru gave him the empowerment of Hevajra. At that time, Naropa manifested clearly in the sky the mandala of Hevajra with all the deities, while he just remained seated and asked Marpa Lotsawa, "Will you prostrate to me, the Guru, first, or to the yidam, the mandala deities, first?" Of course, this phrasing is a little bit different, but later we also compared some different historical accounts. And there's a slight difference. What was compiled later is like this. There are different historical accounts, so what His Holiness taught earlier has some slight adjustments from this place. Then Marpa Lotsawa thought to himself, "I have received many teachings from the Lama, and today I want to receive the teaching directly from the yidam." So he told his teacher, "I'd like to prostrate to the yidam first." Then, as soon as he finished his words, all the deities melted into light and dissolved into the Guru's heart center. Then Marpa Lotsawa reflected, "It seems like in this matter today I've made a great mistake. All deities are indeed the manifestation of the Guru, and other than the Guru there are no other yidams. The one I truly need to serve and respect with devotion is the Guru. So I was wrong." He realized this at that time. However, I have always considered the Guru to be even more important than the yidam, and whenever I meditate on the yidam, I always visualize the Guru above my head. I've never regarded the yidam as more important, so perhaps the auspicious interdependence has not been destroyed too severely, I pray. On this point, perhaps the Dharma text we distributed earlier and later are a little bit different, but we should follow the later one. Our Aid Journey to the West, doesn't it have two versions? The later one has some slight differences. Different historical accounts say different things. What His Holiness taught probably also follows different historical accounts, so at that time there were some slight adjustments. Later, Naropa, through his clairvoyant wisdom, gave him a prophecy, saying this: "Since you chose to prostrate to the yidam first instead of choosing to prostrate to the guru, this damages the interdependent circumstances to some extent." At the beginning, His Holiness mentioned that his family lineage would be like flowers of autumn, perhaps disappearing, but later some people suggested that saying it this way might be a bit inappropriate for the Kagyu tradition. Indeed, historical books explain it quite clearly, but later this passage, based on some suggestions, was removed, so later, yet given that in your daily practice you see the Guru as the main deity, this kind of interdependence indicates that your Dharma lineage will spread far and wide, like the sun shining across every corner of the whole world. At that time, Marpa Lotsawa asked his Guru solemnly, "I have 7 sons of my own blood, headed by Tarma Dode." Because his family lineage indeed later did not continue, at that time he had 7 sons headed by Tarma Dode. "Would you have any means to restore the auspicious interdependence, so that my descendants, especially my family descendants, would also be able to propagate the Dharma?" Everyone knows that Tarma Dode later practiced the transference of consciousness. Relying on a pigeon, he flew to India, and in India at that time he saw that when the child of a Brahmin died, he entered that body, and later became a great Pandita. It seems when I was young I saw in a biography that he received teachings from Rinpoche. It seems in a commentary on the Red Annals it's explained this way, but now I can't remember it very clearly. We can look at this again later. Unfortunately, Naropa responded, "The auspicious interdependence has been destroyed and I cannot restore it." If at that time Marpa Lotsawa's auspicious interdependence had not been destroyed, then his family descendants would certainly have flourished within the Kagyu lineage, playing an even more essential role than his Dharma lineage, and the Kagyu teachings would have prospered many hundreds and thousands of times more so than today's situation. Therefore, as a disciple, it is crucial to view the teacher as the principal source, having faith in him, devotion to him, joy toward him, and respect for him. This point is extremely important. Now let me see how far we've taught. Let's stop here. Today we can just teach symbolically, okay? Alright, we'll stop here today. Everyone has worked quite hard. It's 7:30, 8:30, almost 9 o'clock now.
Bandara